proclaiming the Word of God every day in relevant ways. We're Moody Radio, WCRF Cleveland, WVML 90.5 Millersburg, WVMS 89.5 Sandusky, WVMN 90.1 Newcastle, WVME 91.9 Meadville, and online at moodyradiocleveland.fm.
Time right now is 6:02 here on the morning program. Good morning. Mark Zimmerman with you in the center studio. Gary Bittner is in the newsroom this morning. We'll check back in with him in less than 15 minutes. Time now to, I guess, reintroduce you to a guy who was on this program a few years back and now making his return. Welcoming to the program, actually back to the program, Dr. Glen Duerr, Assistant Professor of International Studies at Cedarville University in Central Ohio. Actually, I've never introduced him as doctor before, so I guess that's a little different. Glenn, how are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you, Mark?
I'm doing great. And, of course, for those of you who remember, and this is hard to believe, but it was 5 years ago that we were teamed up on Sports Time Ohio doing the Cleveland City Stars soccer matches.
Indeed, yeah, that was a lot of fun, and it's great to be back with you, Mark.
Yes, and we will talk again this summer, but about another topic, and we'll get to that towards the end of our conversation. But, Glenn, I wanted to have you on today to talk about the Crimea and Ukraine, because it has been dominating the news cycle now for over a month. But I guess before we begin in the present, we need to go back into the past because, Glenn, Crimea is a point of the globe and Ukraine where the unrest is not foreign to that location, and it has occurred many times over the last century.
Indeed. Crimea is of vital strategic importance. It is on the Black Sea, and the Black Sea actually links through to the Mediterranean, to the Atlantic. And for Russia, it is its sole warm water port, meaning it can use it year-round. And so it is vitally, vitally important. When the Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, Ukraine became an independent country, and as part of that, it still had the territory of Crimea. Now, it's heavily contested by the Russians because in 1954, the General Secretary of the Communist Party, Nikita Khrushchev, actually gave Crimea as a present to the Ukrainians, Ukraine being one of the 15 republics within the Soviet Union. So it wasn't seen as a big deal during that time, but when the Soviet Union fell apart, Russia was then without Crimea. As you noted, it's had this long and tumultuous history as well. The British, French, Ottomans, and Russians actually fought over it from 1853 through 1856. It was part of a time when Russia was expanding its territory, and it was seen as a check by the British, French, and Ottomans as part of the post-Napoleonic War era in Europe that it had existed from 1815 onwards. And so for Russia, it's been within their circle of interest for a long period of time. They actually have an agreement with the Ukrainian government currently that leases Sevastopol. There is a shipyard there and a base. It's on the kind of southwestern tip of Crimea, and that's where the Russians have their most famous naval fleet.
We've got Dr. Glen Duerr with us. He is the Assistant Professor of International Studies at Cedarville University in South Central Ohio. Glenn, so you have now brought us up to speed and up to the present. So now let's take a look at this. For those of us who are trying to put all this together in our minds,